All right, welcome to the RP 7th grade RP.1 level 1 video, which means this is the simplest version of this question. It'll just be one example and one you do. There'll be also a level 2, level 3, and possibly even level 4 question, one for you to get to harder questions. But here is for us to get the basic concept on how to solve these questions. So let's check it out. Maisha is baking brownies. She uses 2/3 a cup of sugar to make 8 brownies. The brownies taste great, and she wants to make another batch. That makes 12 brownies. How much sugar should she use? So the basis behind this question is that she has to use the same ratio of sugar to brownies, so that the brownies taste the exact same they did the first time when they tasted great. But if she puts in 2/3 a cup of sugar for 12 brownies, which is the same amount you put in for 8, they won't taste as good because there's not the same proportion of sugar. So anytime we approach these kind of questions, and I kind of already gave it away for this one, we'd say, what two things, or what two units, or what two variables are we talking about here? Well, here we're talking about cups of sugar and brownies. Those are the two things that we're talking about here. Cups of sugar and brownies. So I'm going to set up a ratio. A sugar to brownies ratio. And I always am going to write it out with words first, so that I don't get confused later in the process. I am talking about the sugar to brownies ratio. It does not matter which variable goes on top and which goes on the bottom, as long as you stay consistent. So if you put brownies over sugar and you align up your numbers right, you'll still get the same answer. So let's go through the next steps now. The next steps, we're going to make another fraction, but this time instead of with words, we're actually going to plug in numbers. And we're going to look for the numbers that go with each unit. Well, here I have 2/3 that clearly goes with cups of sugar. Okay? 2/3 cups of sugar. So I'm going to put, because sugar is on the top of the fraction, 2/3, because it goes with sugar, also needs to be on the top. So I have 2/3 on the top with sugar. I'm going to keep reading. To make 8, found another number, brownies. So 8, because brownies is on the bottom, also needs to go on the bottom. I put an 8 there. The brownies taste great, and she wants to make another batch. That makes 12 brownies. Well, I have another number, and I need to make another fraction, so that's good. So this 12 goes with brownies. This 12 clearly goes with the word brownies right here. So that 12 needs to go on the bottom, just like brownies goes on the bottom. How much sugar should she use? Now, I don't have another number to put here, because that's my unknown. I don't know how much sugar. And you can always kind of see it from the question. It says how much sugar, right? That phrase right there kind of tips me to that's my unknown. And in math, we represent unknowns with variables, right? I could put an X there, but I'm going to put an S for sugar. So I'm going to put an S right there. That represents the unknown quantity of sugar that we're trying to figure out. So now that I've set up this ratio, I can see that I really have right here, and I'm going to box it in, is a cross multiplication problem. This equals this. So to solve this proportion, we are going to cross multiply. Cross multiplication is a precursor skill that you need to have before you do these. So if you're unfamiliar with cross multiplication, maybe you need to go check out a video before this. But I'm going to cross multiply because I'm going to assume you know it. And I'm going to start with 8 times s. I'm going to cross multiply like that. Okay? 8 times s, I can show that as 8s. Because again, a number next to a variable signals multiplication. 8s really means 8 times s. Then I'm going to cross multiply 12 times 2/3. Let me write that out. I like to show all computation or all the raw math away from my actual equation so I don't get confused. I'm going to show that off to the side here. 12, and I'm going to make it a fraction because I'm multiplying a fraction, 12 over 1, times 2/3. 12 times 2 is 24. 1 times 3 is 3, and I get 24 over 3. Well, 24 divided by 3, again, hopefully you've seen my other videos, this line always just means division. That's what it means in fractions. So 24 divided by 3 is 8, and I know I'm getting out of the light a little here, but I wrote an 8 if you can't see it very well. So I'm going to say 8s equals 8, because cross sections are always equal to each other. 8s equals 8. Now I'm just trying to get s by itself. This is a one-step algebraic equation. Well, this saying 8 times s equals 8. To figure that out, variables like to be by themselves. I always like to say variables are introverts. They don't like to be around numbers. To get rid of something, you got to do the opposite of what they like. Here we have multiplication, 8 times s. The opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide by 8. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other to keep it balanced. These cancel out. I have s by itself, which is what I want. 8 divided by 8 is 1. And that's my answer. S equals 1. She should use 1 cup of sugar. Okay? That's how we solve this question. Hopefully you're able to kind of get it from there. If you weren't, you can rewind and check out another problem. Or check out the problem again, step by step. If not, we're about to head to the you-do. So what I want you to do here is pause while I erase, do the you-do on your own, and then check your work with me as I go over it. Okay, if you're unpaused and you solved the problem, let's get to it. A printer cartridge with 1/4 a carton of ink can print 1/3 a box of paper. How much of an ink carton would be needed to print a full box of paper? So again, I have to find what are the two units, what are the two things that I'm talking about in this question? Well, I'm talking about cartons of ink, right? And I'm talking about boxes of paper. So those are the two things I'm talking about. And I'm going to write out that ratio here. I'm going to write ink over paper. Again, you might have wrote paper over ink. It does not matter what goes on top and what goes on the bottom, as long as once you decide, you stay consistent. So let's get to it. 1/4, well, that goes with ink. So since ink is on the top for me, 1/4 also needs to be on the top. Now I'm going to keep reading. Can print 1/3, there's another number, box of paper. And I'm going to write 1/3 on the bottom because paper's on the bottom and 1/3 goes with paper. Now I'm going to set up my second fraction. How much of an ink carton would be needed to print a full box of paper? I don't see another number here. But what I have to do is look for something that might imply a number. And this is where it might have tripped you up. This full box of paper, how much is a full box? It's 1. You'll see words like entire, I'm going to write these here, entire, full, whole. These all mean 1. Okay? These all mean 1. So when you see these, don't get tripped up. Just know it's a 1. So this is really 1 box of paper. So when I set up my next fraction, well, I know a 1 has to go on the bottom because paper is on the bottom. And now I have my missing spot. Well, that makes sense because right here it says how much of an ink carton. How much, right? It tips it right there. So I'm going to put an I as my variable for ink. Now I can cross multiply and solve. I'm going to do 1/3 times I. Again, it's just 1/3 I. Equals 1/4 times 1. And I'm going to put 1 over 1. Again, the cross sections are always equal to each other. That's what allows us to solve. So 1/4 times 1 over 1 is just 1/4 equals 1/3 I. Now I have a fraction here, but I'm not going to let that confuse me. Fractions are not special. They get the same treatment. So when I have 1/3 times I have to undo that multiplication the same way I did in the example. I have to divide each side by 1/3. When I do that, these cancel out and I get I by itself, which is what I want. On this side, I have 1/4 divided by 1/3. I'm going to write it out so it makes more sense to me. 1/4 divided by 1/3. Now I can divide these fractions by keep, change, flip. I think most of us have seen that before. I'm going to keep the 1/4, change this to multiplication, flip to 3 over 1, and 1 times 3 is 3, 4 times 1 is 4, and I get 3/4. So I is equal to 3/4. The answer to this question is 3/4. Okay? Hopefully you understand the level 1 question. If you don't, again, always check in with your teacher. For most of you, that's me. There'll be some level 2 and level 3 questions in the next upcoming videos if you thought that was pretty easy.